Being homeless in Austin, does it mean you're walking a road to nowhere, or is there hope? That's our subject today on Austin Faith Dialogue. Austin Faith Dialogue, a public affairs series at the crossroads of religion and life. Austin Faith Dialogue highlights the interaction of the religious community with the social and cultural issues in the area in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KTBC TV. Join us now for this week's edition of Austin Faith Dialogue. Hello, I'm Richard Thompson, pastor of Central Presbyterian Church, and your host for this edition of Austin Faith Dialogue. This program is the first in a scheduled two-part series about a group of people we see every day. But we often push these people out of our mind. These people are the homeless. Walk down any street in the downtown section of our city, and you will probably come across a person who is homeless and needs help. But what can we do as a society? Government cutbacks are not helping the situation. It's more than likely we're making the problem worse. And there is one group in Austin, however, that is trying to make a positive impact. It's the religious community. It started 6 years ago when two women from Westlake Presbyterian Church began handing out donuts on 2nd Street. Today's VIPs, like Governor Ann Richards, come to see how the Foundation for the Homeless serves as an average of 150 meals at its weekly Tuesday morning breakfast. But the Foundation for the Homeless has grown to become more than a vehicle for serving meals to the homeless. Today, the Foundation for the Homeless also includes a prevention program that counsels families at risk from becoming homeless victims. It also means the start of a day camp for homeless children in the summer of 1992 in cooperation with the Salvation Army. Finally, the Foundation is at the forefront of networking with other homeless services to avoid duplication of services. Today we will talk with the three people who play key roles at the Foundation for the Homeless and discover more about this growing and vital organization in the city's crusade to stop homelessness. Our first guest is a co-founder of the Foundation. June Davis began her efforts on 2nd Street simply handing out donuts. Also joining us today is Bill Resch, a member of the Board of Directors of the Foundation of the Homeless. He's credited as a key member of the organization's fundraising efforts. Finally, we also wish to welcome Grace Lee, who as Executive Director of the Foundation has been credited with the group's networking efforts to help the organization in other homeless efforts. Thank you all for joining us. Before we begin our discussion, however, let's take a quick look at a very sobering statistic. In Austin, it's estimated that there are anywhere from 3,000 to 6,000 homeless in our city. So we begin our discussion, we definitely see that there is a large problem to solve on Austin streets. And as we begin, let's take just a survey of this number that we were looking at. Does that square with your perception of how many folks here in town are suffering that condition?
There are an awful lot of people out there that are homeless, that are living with other people, that are living in their cars, on the streets, in shelters. There's a lot of people who really do not have their own home.
And this counts those who are, for example, the statistics, you gather that from the Salvation Army, from Caritas, from public agencies. How do you come up with that figure?
It's hard to come up with an actual number, a number that's dependable, because so many of homeless people are what we call hidden homeless. It's a group of people that's not easily visible, they're not easy to find. You can't identify them as easily as the person who is literally living on the streets and is obviously very dirty and you know, other things which give them away.
It's an approximation.
Right. There are a lot of people living in their cars. we get phone calls pretty regularly from people who have someone living in a car parked at a park in their neighborhood, and they wonder what to do.
Well, one of the things I think that we were mentioning, June, that you helped start this back in 1986. Have you seen the problem get worse, get better, about the same? What's your perception of that?
It seems to me, like you said in the introduction, with the cutback in some of the social services, the problem is probably getting worse. We're seeing more families out and more women with children, women who are not married but have children to help support. So I would think the problem is getting worse.
That's based on your observation.
Just on observation.
If we're trying to go by statistics, do any of you have any handle on what we compared today in Austin with what it was in the mid-'80s, number-wise? Does that?
Oh, well, in the mid-'80s, I would say the number would be very, very low, maybe in low hundreds even in Austin.
Yeah.
When I began this type of work in 1985, it was very, very different from now.
Okay.
Very different.
Well, you can experience it in terms of just the numbers that you were serving compared to today.
Right.
Bill, what's been your connection with the organization?
Well, I got involved with the organization about 2 years ago. Started driving a van on Tuesday morning to pick up the homeless people downtown and carry them back to Westlake Presbyterian where we feed them. And then subsequent to that, I've gotten involved in the Holy Open last year in organizing and raising money for the foundation.
The Holy Open.
The Holy Open.
Is that a religious order of some sort? Open to anybody that wants to become holy? How does that work?
We could look at it that way, but it's a fundraising event for the foundation, and we have raised, last year I guess we raised about $15,000.
It's a golf tournament?
Golf tournament, tennis tournament, and a dinner. And this year it's going to be on August the 5th, and we encourage everybody to participate.
Now, where is that?
It will be at Barton Creek Country Club.
And people want to find out about it. We'll have a number at the end of the show that we can show, and people can respond concretely in that way. I think that if people wanted to call to find out more about what the organization is doing, we mentioned earlier on that it started out with serving some breakfast type of activity, first on 2nd Street and then at Westlake Presbyterian Church, which is still going on today.
That's right.
Every Tuesday there's a bus that takes, we said 150 number
It's
approximately.
probably a good average.
And what happens out of the church on those mornings?
Well, it's really fun. If anybody wants to come and have a unique, fun morning, they should come about 6:15. The guys get there when the vans and the buses come, and some of them want to go to the clothes closet first. They can get a complete change of clothing. Sometimes they can get new socks and new underwear if we have that available. Toilet articles, they can take a shower. We have 6 men's showers, 6 women's showers. And then we have a wonderful breakfast. All the volunteers leave their families with cereal and milk, and we go down and the men get scrambled eggs and our breakfast tacos and sausage, eggs, orange juice, coffee, hash browns. It's a great breakfast. Then we have AA meetings if the men would like to attend. We have a bank that we have set up of doctors and dentists and ophthalmologists in Austin, where if someone needs an appointment with a doctor, a dentist, or ophthalmologist, we make that appointment and they can go in free of charge. And what else is done? It's really fun. We get to know the people on a first-name basis. They wear a name tag. We wear a name tag that just has the first name. So after a couple of times of their coming, we can greet them at the door and say, "Hi, Pat, how are you doing? We're glad you're here."
Right. Well, now, isn't it the case that you started out by saying that there were the men as they arrived, but then later you made mention of women and children, so it is a mixed group.
It is a mixed group. We have a hard time getting so many women and children there, and because the men want to go so badly, they rush to get on the buses and on the vans. We would like to have one van dedicated just to women and children, at least one van, because the women don't want to endanger their children by rushing to get on the bus.
So there is some tension at that point. Well, I guess that what you're doing there at the church in regard to one morning, does it go most of the morning, and with the recreation?
Not really. Not really. They can play basketball, but we get them there around 6:30, Bill.
Normally, yeah.
Normally, and they're gone by 8 because
really?
we like to get them back downtown so they can get a job, if possible, for the day.
So it's a relatively short period of time that they're there.
Right. If they need a doctor appointment or something like that, they may stay around and talk with Grace or one of the Vista volunteers for a while.
Okay, well now that is a drop in the bucket as
Right.
far as the problem that we were talking about earlier in the show. It is something, however, that people can do. I mean, you can drive a bus once
right.
a month to help out. You've got other
Help
volunteers
serve meals.
that is of value from your standpoint. I think maybe one of the things that we want to recognize is it's a two-way street.
Oh, yeah.
What have you gained out of this, Bill, besides
Well, I
meeting
think-
some of these folks?
For me, it's been a real rewarding experience. I've you know, seen some of these people firsthand and talked to them, and what I think I've really gotten most of all out of this is that you know, this is not a problem that's someplace else, that these are people, and that, you know, as people, you can't help but have your heart go out to them when you're, you know, when you're talking to them, when you're visiting with them, as we carry them back and forth or as we serve them. And so I think that what I've gotten out of that is the reward of helping other people, hopefully get back in the mainstream of our society. You know.
It's not, they're not just statistics, but they're individuals that you can...
No, I think that's the
relate to.
problem, that one of the big problems we have is that we see so much statistics on TV and on the news and the radio and in the papers that we tend to sort of depersonalize these people, and we don't treat them mentally. We don't think about them as being individuals, and I think that getting out there and visiting with these people is really, really important.
Well, let's talk about the help in terms of the difference that is made, that you can tell, some measurable difference, as you've not only worked with the Tuesday morning breakfast program, but with the other programs of the foundation. Can you give us, without using names, just examples?
Well, I think the most important thing that we do is to help people begin to restore their self-esteem. And that really takes a lot of one-on-one contact. And that's where we tend to be different from other service organizations, because rather than centering on how many people we're helping, we concern ourselves with helping them effectively, which means really taking the time to get to know them. And we've set ourselves up purposefully to operate that way, so that if a person needs a 30-minute discussion just to tell you what's going on with them, you afford them that. When a person is looking for work, anybody can, I mean, in this day and age, anybody can imagine what it's like looking for work. It's difficult. It takes a lot to keep your mental energy up. And imagine if you can't brush your teeth every morning, if you don't have a decent pair of shoes to wear, if you don't have, excuse me, if you don't have clean clothes to wear. So this is where we come into play. When a person does get that job, we may never see them again. Sometimes we don't know. And then other times we do hear the results of what we're doing. I remember last Christmas time, one of our volunteers came up to me and she was so excited because she wanted to tell me the story, and she asked me if I knew this person. She gave me the name and I said, no, I have no idea who that is. And she says, well, I only saw him one time myself, but what happened was at 2nd Street, she had engaged him in a conversation, and he really wanted to work, so she sent him to a Texas Employment Commission, to a particular person who she knows. Actually, well, she's married to this person. But what she did was send him there, and then she never saw him again. Well, 1 year later, the man came back just to visit. It was Christmas time, and he told her, I followed up, I went, I got a job, and I've been on that job for a year, and I came back just to thank you. Well, she was on cloud 9. What she did was really listen. I mean, she made that eye contact, she took the time to hear his whole story, and what she did can be seen as something small, but for that man, it could be a difference in his whole life.
Okay, and in that particular case, it did make a big difference.
Yes, it did.
Well, one of the things, too, that I've felt is, maybe as folks learn about your work for the first time, that it's one of several agencies that work in the city that are trying to make a difference. Caritas, Salvation Army, Hobo, folks that we'll be talking to next week. What is in this constellation of services, what gives the foundation its distinctiveness? What would be missing if you weren't there? Just any of you can respond. Maybe let's give June a chance to, because you were there from the beginning.
Well, I think I would answer it in two ways. One, I've had people say to me, some of the men, why are you here? Why are you doing this? What's in it for you? And my response, and I don't know if they get this anywhere else, and I believe this is true, I think we are there because we are God's emissaries in the world, and He works through people, even like us, and to show God's love, to show His love to those people. And I think that's the main reason that we're there, to pass on God's love to those people who, in the eyes of so many people in society, really are unlovable.
So it's the religious motivation that gives you some distinctiveness in
I
your work.
think it does. I really do. Plus the fact we have never turned anyone away. No matter who comes to our doors, we do what we can to help them. They can be disruptive in society. You know, we've had people, I'm sure, with criminal records. Even no matter in what condition they might show up, we've never turned anyone away.
All right.
And I think that's very distinctive.
Well, I'd like to pursue that in just a bit, and we'll continue our discussion on the homeless and how the religious community is trying to solve this social issue right after this.
Serving Austin means serving you. That has always been the primary goal of Austin Metropolitan Ministries. We are religion in action through the work of these organizations. Each plays a key role in making the capital city a better place to live, but we can't do it alone. Do you have some spare time, talents, or any resources that you can share? If you do, please call AMM at 472-7627, because serving Austin means serving you.
We're back, and we continue our discussion on the homeless with our three guests. June Davis, co-founder of the Foundation for the Homeless, Bill Resch, a member of the organization's board of directors, and Grace Lee, the foundation's executive director. I'd like to continue that discussion in terms of what makes the Foundation for the Homeless unique, and you mentioned, June, the religious motive. Now, Caritas, Salvation Army both have religious origins and motivations as well. And I think that the one thing that we would like to recognize is that as all of these share that fundamental support of our faith, that the thing which makes a difference, I believe, is hope. That the kind of continuing, both for those who are in that condition and those of us who are not in the condition, that there is hope for the future, that we don't have to keep the spiral of hopeless homelessness in our midst. And I really would like to just focus on that a bit, because if we don't have that conviction, if we think that we're going to be doing the same thing 100 years from now, only several times worse than it is now, then that's discouraging. So the whole issue of advocacy is raised. How do you affect systems, not just working with individuals and helping people, you know, find some clothes and some food, but how do you deal with these larger systems, the governmental and social systems that have kept us locked into this before? And I think maybe Grace, you said you had some thoughts about that.
One thing that we've done is to always be aware of what the other organizations are offering and who is eligible. And because we take the time to really find out what's going on with the people that come to us, we are able to cut through some of the time for screening and figuring out specifically what the problems are, and then we can make referrals to these organizations. We can talk directly to staff people, the caseworkers at these organizations, point out what this particular person's situation is, and cut through some of the red tape, but also make the other person's job a little bit easier, because then they don't have to take as much time as we did to find out exactly what the situation is. Because a lot of times, because the crisis of homelessness is so overwhelming, people aren't sure what to ask for, or they don't ask for something that they're probably going to get, and that can be very confusing. And the amount of time it takes to sort through that can be very detrimental to running an agency which is seeing perhaps hundreds of people a week in terms of interviewing and getting them rent or food or whatever.
Well, the word networking comes to mind. You work with other agencies in town so that you're not just out there Lone Ranger-like by yourself. And do you find that you're something of a catalyst, that you can help move things along for individuals?
Well, there's been two areas where I think that is true. One is there has been a coalition for homeless service providers in Austin, which pretty much fell apart a year ago. And the few people that were remaining decided to revamp this organization. And today we have something called the Austin Coalition to End Homelessness. For the first time, we have advocates, service providers, and consumers, meaning homeless people, who are working together to discover what the issues are and how best to deal with them. And we have provided the leadership, excuse me, in that area. The other thing is we've been working with Covenant Presbyterian's their pastor, George Cladis, who has an idea of connecting all of the religious community so that you have a church in South Austin that may have a food pantry, you may have someone else that gives rent help, to start connecting these churches with each other, and that's called Project Network. And we've been attending meetings.
You use a computer for that, I would suspect.
Well, that's just the first phase. We don't want to just focus on the fact that we're going to try to use computers to link people. The ultimate goal is to really build relationships between the religious community and people who are really hurting, people who are homeless or who are very poor and at risk.
All right. Well, I think that that's a future sign of hope, to get people working together even closer. The religious community tends oftentimes to be like in your own little fiefdom, and it's tough to break across that and have the time and energy to work with others in a cooperative way, but I think that's a good sign there. I think, too, that we have this question of advocacy in regard to, is there more, and I'm just going in this election year without talking about candidates, but as an electoral issue, it's been said that homelessness has been lost in the discussion because people are so concerned about the plight of the middle class and the fact that people are afraid of falling into homelessness themselves, so they really don't look at what the needs are in the way perhaps we did before. Is there more that can be done on the public or by the public sector? I'm going to ask either one of you to make comments on that, Bill or June.
Well, I would say my goal, and I don't even know if I've mentioned this to Grace, but I maybe have, I think it would be wonderful. I don't think more government money is the answer. I'm one of those people. I think the answer could lie in every church in Austin adopting a homeless family or something like that, where we as individuals step in and really help. And that's what we've tried to do here through Second Street Ministry and the Foundation for the Homeless. I don't think it's something we can slough off on the government and say you need to take care of this or some agency. I think it's up to us to say there are homeless people out there and I'm willing to do what I can to help and to get other people enthusiastic about helping also.
Bill, what's your feeling about that?
Well, I agree with that, but I also would add that I think prevention programs are probably as important. Keeping people from becoming homeless, assisting them when they're at risk, getting to the children of the homeless, which is one of the programs that the foundation is trying to start this summer. I think those kind of programs would really help us along the way to hopefully someday eradicating.
Well, tell us a little bit about that program this summer and how that would help.
Well, I think Grace could probably explain a little better than me, but generally the program is geared toward helping the children of homeless people and providing people to watch them while they're trying to look for jobs and or trying to visit some of these other agencies to get assistance. So.
Okay. Is that pretty well described?
It is an educational program, though. While they're there, there's but it's kind of it's fun at the same time. We've got a teacher from St. Michael's Academy who put the curriculum together, and we have a teacher from Buda, from the Hayes Independent School District, who's actually teaching the program, and we have a university student from the University of Texas who is her assistant, and so we've got educational opportunities for these children, so that two things will happen. One is when they go back to school next fall, they'll have had kind of a camp experience. They've been on field trips and done these things, and we'll have things to talk about like the other children, but at the same time, their real basic skills were kept at a higher level because
Okay.
they were using them during
And this
the
is what
summer.
you're doing with the Salvation Army. So it's an example of cooperation.
Right. And like everything we do, it's also volunteer dependent. We've got about a dozen volunteers that are a part of that program.
There's another volunteer program that I've heard that you're working on called the Hospitality Network.
Yes.
Just in a minute or so, can you give us a view
We're
of that?
real excited about this. This is still in the planning stages, and we are still looking for churches who want to participate, so people should feel free to call in if they have any interest at all. Basically, what happens is the churches will use their own facilities to provide hospitality 1 week at a time for about 14 homeless people. This is family-oriented, so we're looking at husbands, wives, and children to provide meals, overnight stay, and
At churches,
at the
using
churches,
those
right.
facilities.
Right, and then during the day, the people are at a day center, which the Austin Women's Center will be organizing, and they can have that base of operation which remains consistent year-round, where they have a telephone, they've got a comfortable place to be during the day. They don't have to be out on the streets, you know, and dragging the kids around all over trying to get things done.
So if a church didn't feel like it could adopt a homeless family per se, it could make its facilities available for
Right, right.
having them stay there.
Or perhaps some of the very, very small churches who have very limited facilities could join as a support congregation to a host church, because at this point it looks as though we will have churches in this network in various parts of the city. So it's likely that there would be another church close by that they could team up with.
I understand this is a national movement too. It's not just
Yes.
Austin-based.
Yes, but our goal is to be the first one in Texas. It does not exist in Texas at this point, and we're hoping to be the first one in Texas.
Well, I think that you certainly have been the first ones in our minds today in terms of the emphasis that you bring to this issue that we're all concerned about, and I think we not only want to honestly express our frustration about it, but also in faith express our hope that there's a direction to go, there's something we can do, and I want to thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'd like, before ending our program, to show you the phone number of the Foundation for the Homeless. They can use your time, resources, and even applicable talents. So please give them a call, and if you can help, it's 327-3383. I'd like to thank my guests, and I would like to thank you folks for joining us today as we consider this plight of the homeless. We will continue our discussion next week as we look at another key component in the struggle, and that is hobo. I'm Richard Thompson. Peace be with you. For more information, call Austin Metropolitan Ministries at 472-7627.